All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Good in the Head podcast. My name is Pete Jones, and I am good in the head. The purpose of this podcast is to provide a source of as many useful and empowering tools, perspectives, beliefs, habits, and practices to try on and try out to optimize our personal reality, create balance, and provide an opportunity for personal upgrades. And today's guest will absolutely be useful in this endeavor. Welcoming to the show today, Mr. Billy Scott, longtime friend. We've collaborated on a few things. He's given me a lot of really valuable feedback. I think I first met you a few years ago on a Facebook group called Impact Theory League. Is that right?
That's exactly right.
Something that, in all that time, that sticks out the most in my mind that you taught me that was super empowering was the fact that it's okay to disagree. Do you remember writing that sometime?
Yeah.
I'd always grown up a total people pleaser where it was not okay to have feelings or to express them or to get angry. And I repressed a lot of that. And it built up over the years and caused some issues. And then when you typed that and I read that, and I was like, it's okay to disagree. That was like a new program for me to sort of implement and program into my head that really helped out with my personal life.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of universal things that everybody's going to have different perspectives. And based on those perspectives, it changes what reality is. So you can disagree, but still coexist. It's just, it's one of those things that there's always going to be differing opinions. So you might as well accept that and learn to work together,
Huh.
even if you disagree.
So we've talked about sort of different ideas to implement methodically and slowly in order to depolarize um, humans in general in the past. And I was interested on some of your ideas on how to do that, um, and how individuals can implement some of these into a daily practice to start figuring out how to empower themselves to move into that space.
So you're trying to find some tools in order to help people um, kind of depolarize the argument, the conversation, and start having, real discussions. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, real discussions that don't
Useful.
get out of hand and become maybe
Yes.
violent and crazy, and maybe some way that we can all become a little more one and together.
So there's going to be a couple things that you can do, and most of these are going to be because of biases that you have. Because we all have a confirmation bias, which is when you see information that you already think is true, you overvalue it. And then information that it disagrees with you, you will undervalue it. So everybody has that implicit in their system. So that's why when you see, two things about, say, Donald Trump, one positive, one negative, everybody's like has their own side and chooses that side and discounts the other, when both sides have good points usually. Um, so you need to seek out information that disagrees with your current opinion.
What's the
So
value in that?
um, it's going to show you the other side of the argument, and it's going to allow you to see a differing perspective from your own. Because if you know that there are multiple perspectives, then you are more open to new perspectives as well. Just saying like what's right and wrong. If people view that differently, you can go into a conversation and you can understand that. If you just go, no, my way is right, we're going to do it my way, you don't get a productive conversation. So you get a lot of that argumentation back and forth.
Absolutely. I've noticed that in different places I've worked at, that if you've got a manager that comes in and sees him or herself as the boss and they start ordering you around and this is my way or the highway, they don't usually get any kind of feedback or information or data. And so they can't really make truly informed decisions that would empower the entire team to work in a more collaborative and unified way. And it's impactful in a negative way sometimes to the team.
100%. In that situation, you've also got a power dynamic. So you want to keep your job, especially if you're new. So you're coming in and you're learning the ropes. But the reason that people should hire, or leaders should hire, is so that they can learn the rules so that they know when to break them. It's like, yeah, you want them to do it this exact specific way, but you want them to know exactly when they don't have to do that. So you want to empower them, give them autonomy to make those decisions when they're the right decisions, and trust yourself that you made the right hire to do that.
I like the way that you put the word leader, injected that into it. And I think there's absolutely a difference between bosses, managers, and leaders. And, before we get too deep, I'd love it if you could share with the audience sort of your background, your childhood. I know you've been through a lot of life experiences that some of them were difficult, and a few people would have been completely devastated by them. And you seem to have somehow navigated through them gracefully and come out on the other end with a wealth of knowledge and
Thank
tools.
you for that. So I grew up in a bad neighborhood in Sacramento. There was gang violence. I've had 2 knives pulled on me. I got jumped into a gang. I was there when there was a drive-by. It's like, that's not really the ideal situation growing up, but
Yeah,
I
not really.
also feel that I'm very lucky, because in that situation, I had some gifts academically that allowed me to then get out of that situation and go to more gifted schools. So in some ways it's unlucky, in other ways I was very lucky. You have to realize both sides of it. And I say that you have to have some really bad things happen to you before you can let the little things slide. Because if you haven't challenged yourself, if you haven't had those challenges in your life, then everything can just stack on top of you because you don't have the tools with which to work through those. I'm assuming you were talking about when I had my girlfriend had a miscarriage. She broke up with me the same week that my grandmother died. I'd already bought her a ticket to go home with me for my grandmother's funeral. Non-refundable, just like twist that knife a little.
Yeah.
And then I fly home alone, and then there's pictures of me and her in my grandmother's funeral. So it's just like a constant reminder because she's not there. And my grandmother was pretty much the most important woman in my life outside of my girlfriend, because my mom has had some medical issues. She's had some strokes and doesn't communicate very well. Mm-hmm. So my grandparents were my connection to my family there. And then my grandmother was the one I talked to most often. So losing those two and a kid in a week was pretty rough.
Yeah.
I at the time didn't really have the emotional tools to handle something that bad, and so I fell into a pretty bad depression.
Understandably.
I mean, not understandably, because you never think that you're going to do that, right? Like, I never would have thought I would have been the type of person to become depressed. I was happy all the time. Everybody loved me. It's like I was making good money. It's like I really had not a ton to be depressed about. Mm-hmm. But I only saw this very, very small sliver of my life and was focusing on it.
And we feed what we focus on.
Yeah, and fell pretty deep into that. I was pretty suicidal at some points, trying to kind of figure out how to fall on a knife to make it look like an accident. Yeah. Because I was too scared to cut my own wrists or something. I got lucky because I was already learning new things every day, because I was a salesperson for timeshare of all things, which is awful. And I realized I wasn't a very good salesman. Like, I didn't understand the sales process as well as I thought I did. I'm really good at building rapport, getting along with people, but I wasn't good at closing a sale. So I was taking in as much content about sales and marketing and stuff like that as I could, influence, persuasion, rapport building, and realized that I was getting better at sales because of it. So it kind of rolled over into my own personal life, where it's like, well, hey, I've got a problem. This is not how I want to live the rest of my life. There's got to be some information out there that helps me get through this, that helps me, start on the right path, headed the right way. So that's kind of how it started. As I made one shift, which is the big one you have to make, and that's I took total responsibility for everything in my life. The fact that I was depressed, the situation I was in, everything. It's like, it didn't matter if somebody screwed me over or if so-and-so stole this, or, I put them in the position to do that to me. So I still have a responsibility in that situation.
What an empowering tool. I really like that one.
So that was the first real shift I made, and that got me back on my way to being a much more grateful person. Gratitude is the biggest tool.
Why do you think that one thing made such an impact in your life?
So gratitude is it's like a security blanket against depression. Because if you are grateful, you cannot be depressed at the same time. Because you can't be depressed about everything in your life while you're happy about everything in your life and grateful for it. So just writing down 3 things I was grateful for every morning and every night, it took me less than a month, and my mind had completely flipped as far as the things that it was looking for. Now, I do a very specific form of gratitude practice where I write down those 3 things. I write down one person in my network. You've been on there before. One thing about myself, so self-love as well. And then one seemingly small thing that's actually really fucking cool. Like
water. Yeah.
like if we didn't have running water, could you imagine? Or refrigeration, AC, like light.
A door you can lock for safety reasons. Yeah.
Like medical science, antibiotics, everything. There's just so many really random things that we don't appreciate anymore because they're so ubiquitous. They're everywhere. But if we didn't have those things, life would suck a lot more than it does.
Truly.
We have beds, we have shelter, we have food, we have a supply chain, we have jobs. There's so many great things, especially in this country. We got dealt a really good hand of cards. It's we're playing it to the best of our ability too, but we got dealt a good hand.
Yeah, we did. Well, going backwards for just a moment.
Yeah.
How long did your depression last before you started implementing the gratitude practice and switching everything around?
It was several years. I started to fall down it in my job. Ended up losing that job. I moved across the country for a girl, which is never the right thing to do.
Never know.
I know. And I would do it again in the same situation because that was what I figured was right at the time. Not the right person, but it was the right move.
That's okay.
So it had to have been over the course of 3.5, 4 years that I would say, clinically depressed. My job in Las Vegas here was to host people at nightclubs and to make sure that they had a good time. So that created this real cognitive dissonance because I'm making sure everybody has a good time by trying to act like I'm having a good time, but inside I know how I feel.
Oh my gosh. The crisis of identity right there, huh?
Yeah, it's like I'm not being true to myself, and it's like I cringe now thinking about it, but yeah, it's made me who I am, so I wouldn't go back and trade it because I like who I am, and I wouldn't have ended up in this spot without those things happening. So
Interesting how life unfolds for us. It's like we always think, why is this happening to me? But really, if you switch the perspective, put on a different set of lenses in your glasses or whatever, and then realize that everything that's happening is happening for us.
Yeah.
That's an empowering belief. The reason I was asking is because I was wondering if there's a correlation between how long someone's depressed, how long those chemicals and hormones are going through the body and then building up a totally different emotional baseline than they're used to. And then the time that you said you got out of it was about a month. That's pretty quick.
So
Seems quick.
that's just for things that I was looking for. So I could find and spot more things I was grateful for in a month. Like it's really, gratitude practice is really the smallest habit that will create the largest difference. So if somebody needed to start with something, that's where I'd say they start. But I also did a couple other things. Like I was journaling consistently, trying to, I do two types of journaling. One's just like a brain dump, like whatever comes in my head, I write it out. And then the other one, I call it consultative journaling, which is, it's like I'm being interviewed, but I'm playing both positions. So I'll ask myself a question like, what's my biggest problem? And then I'll write an answer. And then based on that answer, I'll ask myself a deeper level question. So, and I'll just keep asking deeper and deeper questions until I hit that kind of aha moment where it's like, oh, that's where all this comes from. And you really do feel like you have those quite a bit when, at least I did when I was journaling. And then the last thing is I was having, we all are our biggest critics. And I'm no different. I was probably worse than most. Like if I'd have talked to other people like I talked to myself, I'd have no friends.
Interesting, huh? How we do that.
It's like, because we're with ourselves all the time, so we know all of our little faults, all of our little cracks and imperfections, where other people don't see those because they're not visible to anybody else. They're not with you 100% of the time, so they wouldn't know.
Do you think there's a correlation between how we were programmed as children and our misconceptions about what we thought we were being told and the beliefs that we instilled within ourselves to create a self-image that then carried on? And is that why maybe some of us are so cruel to ourselves? Just
So
feeling less than all the time.
I don't think that it's a nurture thing. I think it's actually baked in because we have a negativity bias, meaning we pay more attention to the negative events in our lives than the positive ones because they have deeper ramifications. Like the example everybody shows is like, so there's a lion on the savannah sitting next to a tree and then there's apples in the tree. It's like the negative information of the lion is much more important to your survival than the positive of there's some apples in the tree.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. So it's a survival tactic
it's an evolutionary
in.
benefit to pay more attention to negative information than positive.
To survive. But
Yeah.
then to really truly thrive in life,
Right.
is there a way to bake that out and
Yeah,
start
so
focusing more?
that's the next tool I was getting to is I did a cognitive rewiring process. So every time I caught myself speaking negatively about myself or anything, I would do what's called a pattern interrupt. I'd stop and I'd clap my hands loud as I could one time. Didn't matter where I was. I was in line at like McDonald's. It's like a pop. Everybody's like, what? And it didn't matter. I didn't care. I bring my attention to this moment.
Huh.
And then I would ask myself a empowering question. What is beautiful about this moment? How do I know that what I was saying is not true? It's like, so if I was saying that I'm stupid, it's like, how do I know that I'm smart? Or like I said, what is beautiful about this moment was a great one because it allowed me to see more things of beauty all over the place. Didn't matter if it was the wind or birds chirping or something that you hadn't even thought about before you actually did that pattern interrupt and focused on what was beautiful.
So that pattern interrupt, you know how people sometimes snap the rubber band and it's sort of like that. Where did you get that clapping of the hands idea from?
So I just made it up, but it's from like Tony Robbins' principle of the pattern interrupts. He does priming too, where it's a lot of movement, So I wanted to do a violent movement to actually shake up my body, my entire body, and put myself into the moment. Rather than just something small, I wanted an explosive movement. And the clap is just the easiest thing that came to mind.
Interesting. Pretty brilliant. I like that one. That's something anybody can do anywhere to seem crazy, but really they're quite brilliant.
I'll never see most of those people ever again.
Yeah, so who cares, right?
Yeah.
Now you said something about loving yourself or liking yourself.
Yeah. Is part of the gratitude practice. Something about yourself that you are grateful for, you start to, because you're not going to just repeat the same thing every day about yourself. So you have to find new things about yourself that you're grateful for. So just in that process of going down the line, it's like, well, I like this, but I could say I like this too, and this, and the things get maybe smaller and smaller, but you still know that you're grateful for multiple things about yourself and your situation. And then, like I said, your network, which is a friend or somebody in your business network or something like that. So you're hitting all three key areas of a person's life: your interpersonal relationships, your internal relationship, and your relationship with the world. So you hit those three things as part of the gratitude practice, and those are three very, very important things for positive outlook.
I agree with that 100%. And by the way, you've been on my gratitude list more than once as well, just so you know. Absolutely.
Happy to hear.
I have a personal opinion that self-image is the first and foremost, most important thing that there is for anybody to work on as far as the self-development realm. I don't know if you agree with that or not, or.
So I call it identity because I think it's more than just your self-image, because it has to do with your beliefs about the world and things as well.
Yeah, I like that.
So I think that identity is very, very powerful.
How do you identify when you say the words I am? What comes after that?
So my identity statement is I am a lifelong learner, differential thinker, and problem solver with a healthy competitive streak. That is my identity statement that I have come up with. I actually have an ebook that I wrote about building your own empowering personal identity from the ground up, like your core values. It's got your strengths, weaknesses, and it walks you through your beliefs about the world and how you can put that all together, shrink it down to something that is empowering and useful, not just that it's cool and it's great to have that identity shell, but it's useful to you to get to your goals. So like just believing that you can do something will automatically make you closer to getting it done. So if you set a goal, but you don't believe you can do it, then that's counterintuitive. You're just going to be working against yourself, which that's probably part of the self-image kind of alignment thing that you were talking about. The limiting beliefs and things like that, just eliminating those. And
how do you eliminate a limiting belief like I can't do hard things, or nobody trusts me, nobody loves me, I'm not good enough for that girl? How do you get rid of those things?
So every belief is supported by experience or what you've learned. So if you want a new belief, you just have to give more support to that belief, more legs underneath it to give it stability than your old belief. So if you say that I can't or whatever, you need enough support for I can to be more stable than I can't. So you have to basically just flip whatever limiting belief it is, and you need to start making that one unstable. So you kick out a leg here, you're like, well, why do I think I can't?
There you go.
And then you come up with whatever reasons, and you go, well, are these actually true?
So the journaling issue would come in
and
and
start
say,
just taking them out one by one if you can, because then you're destabilizing that belief. And then you go to install your new belief, which is I can. And it's like, why can't I? Like, what proof do I have that I can?
I like that.
That's how you can flip a limiting belief. Because you can't just eliminate one. You've got to replace it with something. And that means you need to have more support for the one that you're trying to install than the one you already have. And like I said, a lot of that comes from experience and like actually growing up very early. If your parents told you could do anything or be anything, then you start to believe that thing at a very, very core level. But if you didn't, unfortunately, get that, then you have to work around that, which is you have to uninstall the old belief. It's like a computer. Uninstall this software, put in the new one, and let's give it a go. This is iOS Billy 0.0.
I'm sure you've probably heard quite a bit of content from Bruce Lipton and how to reprogram the subconscious through repetition and before and after while you're going into sleep mode and different things like that. What are your thoughts about reprogramming the subconscious through repetition?
It's a very, very useful tool. And it's not just repetition. When he talks about doing it before and after sleep, you're at a different brainwave level. So normal everyday life, you're at beta wave, which is you're taking in information, you're sending information out, thinking through things, comparing things. That's very beta. It's a high frequency. If you drop to, say, a restful state like meditation, or like if you're in flow, those you're actually dropping to an alpha level brainwave, which is slower and it's more suggestible at that point because you're able to embed those things into your subconscious much easier if you're in an alpha state as opposed to the beta. So just repeating an affirmation during the middle of the day isn't going to do as much good as doing it before or after your sleep. Because entering and exiting sleep, your mind is calmed and you're already in that alpha level state. You can learn to put yourself in that state through, like I said, meditation and things like that. Mm-hmm. So you can then utilize repetition. But if you're just in beta all the time and you're repeating things, it's not as effective as trying to reprogram from the alpha level.
Interesting. So, do you have a recording or a practice or things that you use repetitiously in order to reprogram your subconscious, or have you tried that in the past?
Yeah, so I have affirmations that I go through that I record in my own voice, so that if I play them back to myself, it's my own voice coming back to me.
Nice.
Which makes it better than finding some recording online and just playing it. Because it's like that's somebody else telling you to do something. I'd rather it be me.
I think you're the one that may have given me that idea, that little tidbit, and I ended up doing that just a few days ago. It's funny you bring that up.
How's
just
it going
got this. Well, I've been doing it, and about halfway through, I drift off to sleep, and I start snoring, and my wife wakes me up, and the recording's over. So I'm hoping that it's in there.
Just means you need more sleep. So I actually do that in the morning as well, but I have it with what I call my mind movie. It's like a vision board, but it's a video.
I remember you telling me about that. I'm really interested in this idea.
It's really basically like a slideshow of all the images and things that would be on my vision board in a video format with music and quotes that I like and affirmations that I have. It's about 4 minutes long, and I watch it every day so that I have that motivation to do those things that I want to do from the video. So it's a great way to focus your mind in on the things that you think are important. And
what point of the
that
morning do you
changes
do that?
behavior. What's
Is
that?
that like immediately after waking up, you go right into that, or?
So the first thing I do is the gratitude practice, 100%. Then I normally meditate, and then I set my most important task for the day and any other subsequent tasks that I need to get done, so that I know what my priorities are for the day, and then I do it. So it becomes after, giving myself a little bit of time to wake up. I do a 10-minute meditation, not a ton, but that's normally enough for me. Or I get way bored and I'm like you said, fall asleep or something like that.
How did you how do you meditate, and when did you start doing that?
So I started meditation when I was depressed, and finding those tools that I was finding intermittently through different websites and different people that I was talking to and things that I found online. And I do the type of meditation that I do, I just call it focus repetition, which is I just focus on my breath, one point of the breath too. It's not any specific thing. It could be, when you're completely inhaled, which is mine, or when you completely exhaled, or at your midpoint, or when you feel the air going by your nostrils, or whatever point of the breath you choose, you just count 1, 2, 3, and eventually everybody does it. Your mind is going to be like, hey, what's over there? And then you bring it back to the breath, to that point of the breath. And for me, I envision that as like a rep for my focus in the gym. So if I was working out in the gym, this would be a 1 rep of my focus. So, and then I start counting again. And when I lose it, just bring the focus back to the breath. So that's like a focus repetition for me. It calms my mind down. It's because my mind goes pretty quick most of the time, but getting that meditation first part of the day calms me down and allows me to be more effective. I would like to try some other types of meditation. I've tried some guided ones, not really a fan. But there are some mantra-based meditations like Transcendental Meditation and things like that.
Yeah, there's hundreds of different methods. It's insane.
Well, specifically the mantra-based ones are the ones I'm interested in lately. Because
why is that?
So there's something about the way that the words are enunciated that creates a vibration. And just the repetition of that plus the vibration puts you into a deeper state. And I've heard really great things from anybody that's tried it. The problem with Transcendental Meditation is you have to do it with a professional, pretty much, because they actually assign you your mantra, because there's, 13 of them or something like that. Okay. They'll assign you your personal mantra, and you can ask Transcendental Meditation people. They will not tell you what their mantra is.
Huh. Interesting. I didn't know that. It's like a sacred thing, huh?
Yeah, they will not share that with anybody else.
That's fascinating.
It's their thing. So
I love what you were kind of dancing with. The word vibration really interests me lately. The intonations, the inflections of the voice, the energy that we enunciate things with. It's kind of fascinating. It's a creation. And I wonder, what do you know about vibrations and how they interact with others as we speak?
So I'm not 100% sure on how much energy is created when we speak. I know that there is a natural vibration of anything that's matter. So anything that we can see, touch, feel, or interact with, that has some sort of frequency, some vibration that it already emits. So with speaking specifically, the reason that I like the vibration is because of what it does to the body. So if you vibrate your body It's a detoxing pathway. It's also, like I said, it puts you into a deeper meditative state. And I think a lot of the vibration stuff that we pick up through our hearing affects us at a subconscious level through like your amygdala and things like that. So it runs it through your fight or flight response and your fear response. Because if something's loud, or if something's dangerous sounding, or if something's ominous, it can completely change your emotion in that moment. So that type of vibration and type of speaking, or technically any sound, has a huge effect on a person's emotional state, because you don't even get to think about that before it runs it through your amygdala. Because if you're scared, you want to be able to react like this. There's no like thinking about like, hey, should I be scared? It's, I'm scared.
Yeah, and go, go, go.
Yeah, so that type of frequency that we pick up, I think is huge. Like I said, for your emotional state specifically. And I think that's another reason why we like music so much. There's never been a human civilization that existed without music or alcohol, technically.
Got to throw that in there, right?
Those are the two things that are universal.
Interesting. Oh, and transportation and prostitution. Don't forget those.
The reason that I brought up the music is because music is repetitive, and that's comforting to us because it's not new. So, but then the way that music is actually composed, it has to be just new enough to keep your interest. Because if you just play the same thing over and over again, you're going to drown it out. Like, you can be listening to the same thing over and over and not even hear it. So it needs to be just enough new to keep you interested, but as repetitive as possible in order to be the safest and most liked thing. I mean, look at any pop song in the last 20 years. They're all hugely repetitive things. So the more popular something is, the more repetitive usually. But so they did this experiment in rats where they would surprise them with a note. It was a C note. They'd just be C, 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 C. And they'd figured out that the way to keep a rat responding to each of the sounds was a pattern where it was like C, C, B, C, C, A, C, B, D, or something like that. It's like 4 notes, but it's a huge long time that you can keep rats reacting to these sounds without them drowning it out or without them becoming accustomed to it. So with a very, very limited amount of notes, you can keep somebody interested in what you're playing. And I'm not really sure where I was going with that, but I'm really fascinated with the things that are universal between all humans, between all life even. And those things are universal. It's like popular songs are popular because the widest amount of people like them. And things that are familiar but novel are always popular. So it has to be close enough to what we currently like, but just different enough to make it different.
So it goes kind of back to the beginning of the conversation, talking about unification versus depolarization. That's one commonality I think that I agree with, that everyone, all the cultures, all people, most people really do enjoy music, and of all different kinds. But something fascinating that you pointed out kind of triggered something within my mind. You know how you go through YouTube and you start watching the same sort of videos, and then pretty soon YouTube logarithm is written so that it sends you more of what you're looking for, what it thinks you're looking for because of your content you've been downloading. How can we use music and logarithms in a way that may unify people in a
So
more effective way?
this is going to be really hard. This is going to be one of the biggest issues that we deal with in the next 5-10 years. Because of social algorithms, not just YouTube, but Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, all of them are trying to keep you on their platform the longest amount of time so they can show you the most ads. So they are fighting for your attention on each of those big platforms, even Google, if you want to put it that way. The longer you stay on their platform, the more times you use it, the more money they make. So they want to feed you the things that you want to see, or the things that guesses that you want to see, because they basically make a model of you, of your behavior, of the posts that you read, of the pictures that you look at, of the links that you click on to go off of Facebook, to the ads that you click on Facebook or opt in for. Facebook has a pixel on outside websites that allows you to track what the Facebook traffic is doing. Not any one person, but what overall traffic is doing. But Facebook can track one person because it's their pixel. So
That's incredible.
they know what website you're going to, what cookies were in your browser when you visited it, so it tells them other sites. They have so much information, so many data points, that they have a fairly good understanding of who you are.
At
Maybe
a conscious level,
yeah,
what way of
maybe
thinking.
even
Sorry.
so more than you do.
That is crazy.
I mean, you can go on there. Like, I'm not a political person, but it has my political views in there. If you go in and look at your own information on Facebook, it'll tell you everything. Like, you can even delete it if you want to. But if you click on the 3 little dots by a sponsored ad and say, why am I seeing this? It'll take you to that information that they have about you. And apparently I have an affinity for African Americans because I posted about Black Lives Matter. And all these things that are very, very like arbitrary. They're basically cherry picking from. So there's 2 types of data. There's implicit and explicit. So implicit is like what I'm giving them. So if they say, here's a survey, whatever I choose on that survey is implicit information. Then there's explicit information, which is information that they can deduce from the information that they have. So if I said, I normally take lunch at this time, they can assume a whole bunch of implicit information, that I have a job, that my job has normal hours, that we have a scheduled lunchtime, that there's so many explicit things that they can infer on that data, and they do. So they can make very educated guesses on a very, very wide range of stuff. There's a story about it was a Target, and Target is trying to figure out patterns of behavior that would tell Target if somebody was possibly pregnant.
I remember this one.
Because they sent prenatal vitamins, right? And a father came in. It's like, why are you sending my 14-year-old daughter prenatal vitamins? And he's livid.
Coupons, right?
Yeah, it's like the mailer under her name, because she's got a Target card, comes with prenatal vitamins and all this stuff about pregnancy. And he is livid. Yells at the manager. Manager apologizes, gives him a gift certificate. And the guy goes home afterward, just still livid about what happened. He's like, this should not be happening to my daughter. She's nowhere near that age. And the guy ends up calling back to the manager and apologizes. He's like, so I have to apologize. There were some things going on in my house that I was not aware of. And his daughter actually was pregnant.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
14-year-old.
It happens. That was
So
in the book The Power of Now by Charles Duhigg, I believe. That was incredibly interesting and mind-blowing.
yeah, the fact that they knew it before the father, like that's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
But that is the kind of data
Wow.
that they have on everybody now because there's so many touch points with everything we do is digital. Your phone, your computer, the websites you go to, the apps that you use. Apple just instituted something where it'll show a green or an orange dot up in the right corner, and that tells you if there's an app requesting use of your microphone or your camera.
Oh, that's what that is. I've seen it.
Because because before that, they would be able to do that and you'd never know. So like apps like Netflix and things like that on your phone would request use of your microphone because they try to hear what you were watching
Yeah.
on your
Interesting.
TV.
Or
Like
discussion you were having.
and what advertisements you've seen, things like that.
How can we use this information to our own benefit?
So like I said, that's going to be a huge issue because just the fact that they're fighting for attention means it's a limited asset. And they have to get better and better at keeping your attention, which means they have to understand you at a cognitive level and draw you back in, which means they will show you more and more radical ideas that you already believe. Because I remember I said we have the confirmation bias. So if you believe something, they're going to send you something a little bit more radical. And you're going to go, wow. And then it's a little more radical. And you're like, wow, this is really? And because of that, because attention is what they're trying to mine, it's finite. So they're going to get really good at knowing what you want, which can be good or bad because depending on what they show you, that's going to be determine basically your behavior.
And how
Like,
extreme we get.
yeah, you can. I think that it's a huge reason why the polarization is happening anyway.
I agree.
Because as we become more connected, like if we're just talking, what are the chances that one of us believes that Satan is real and he kidnapped Jesus and just whatever, like some completely outrageous thing? It's pretty much zero between the two of us. But then if you talk about like your whole neighborhood, yeah, it's still pretty low. Talk about your whole city, yeah, it's still pretty low. Maybe your state. But now, what about your country? Like now we're talking 300 million people. There's gonna be a chance.
Yeah.
So those more and more radical ideas are becoming more and more prevalent because they stick out in your head. Remember how I was saying it has to be different? Because your mind tries to filter out as much information as it can because it doesn't want to have to remember everything or react to everything each time. Like
That's overwhelming.
If you had to think about like which muscles had to contract to walk every step you took, you'd be exhausted
Yeah.
in like 5 minutes.
Thankfully, that's automated at a young
Yeah.
age.
So now, because it's repetitive and ingrained in your subconscious, you don't have to think about it. So that's what the mind is trying to do with everything. So take something that's really widespread, like, hurting people is bad. Like, nobody's going to remember some random person saying that. But if somebody said hurting people is good, you're going to be like, wow, that's going to stick out in my head because it's completely different. So the fact that it is so much different than what you normally get is what makes it stick out in your head. So those more and more radical ideas are more and more memorable to us.
That's why I loved the habit that you introduced at the beginning of this interview too, about seeking out people that have radically different ideas.
Yeah.
And then sort of having that dance between those ideas and asking why and wondering, what are all the perspectives surrounding both extremes? Can we meet in the middle? Can we, sort of unify in any way?
So I believe that we can. I mean, I believe that we're capable of pretty much anything. I believe that the human intelligence, consciousness is capable of understanding and utilizing all the tools and everything we could ever need for this existence. So eventually we will know exactly how everything works, or, good enough approximation that it doesn't matter the difference.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the saying? It says, consciousness informs itself through its creations.
Yeah, it's a Jason Silva thing, right?
I don't know.
Um,
I just heard it the other day. I was like, wow, that's kind of mind blowing if you think about it.
yeah,
What
so
consciousness? Us? It? Who
because
knows?
we build environments, and then the environments then inform our consciousness. And it's this repetitive loop. That's why everything is growing exponentially, because as we get more power and more information, that changes our environment, and the environment informs the next generation. The next generation can build on that. So it's just this never-ending progression of hopefully positive movement.
Yeah.
The social algorithms, to kind of segue back to that, they are dividing people because those radical ideas stick out in people's heads, and they want to keep you on the platform longest. So they're going to show you slightly more radical and radical ideas that you already believe in, because you've stopped and you've read these articles before. We're going to give you something a little bit more radical, and they're basically teasing people out to the very, very edges of society, because now it's like, if you have that crazy idea, you can go online and find other people that believe the same thing. And then you get into these echo chambers of these conversations of people who are just saying back the same thing to you that you already believe, which reinforces your belief. Give me a
Who
second.
does that benefit?
It benefits the social media company because they keep you on your platform longer, allowing them to show you more ads. So if you aren't paying for something, then you are the product that's being sold. So we don't pay for the use of social media apps. That means we are the product being sold. So corporations that want to advertise to us.
They spend how much money a year, you think, advertising agencies, doing research on how to subconsciously reprogram us through repetition?
It's not specifically that. It's because they have all those data points on us, they can then classify and group these people by a number of factors. So I can target people who own dogs and who are vegan and send them a vegan dog food ad. And I can make sure they're above a certain wage class and above a certain age, or live in a certain community. So you can, because they have all those data points, you can then utilize that to filter down your audience that you're advertising to be the most valuable audience for you. That is why they collect all the data points for the businesses to utilize in advertising. Now, they also do that with those data points, is they predict what you want to see. Think about when you go to Facebook, your news feed, right? It's not chronological. It's the most relevant. So you see the same 12 people and all of their posts, but you've got these other hundreds, thousands that you never see anything from. Are they not posting? No, they're posting. It's just Facebook doesn't think that you think that those are valuable for you. So you would scroll by them quickly and never engage. So they go, oh, we don't have to show him this one. Let's keep him with the highest level stuff that he loves, because that'll keep him on the platform longer.
It's almost like they're weaponizing their knowledge about us in order to use us.
They are, but they're not specifically the ones trying to do something evil. They're trying to get to know us so that they occupy the most of our time and attention, which isn't the same as creating something bad. It just so happens that to keep people's attention, the side effects of what those algorithms are programmed to do does polarize us quite a bit.
So what would some good habits and practices be to then be able to take back control, own, like you expressed, full 100% ownership, you know?
Yeah. So the first thing is limit your time on them. Because if you're not on them more, they don't have that as much data. And you know ahead of time how much time you want to spend on something. But when you're in the moment, you're on one of those rabbit holes where you're clicking on links and you're going down this, research.
4 days later.
And you're like, whoa, dude, it's been 3 hours. If you consciously make that decision ahead of time, then that doesn't happen. So you don't waste your time. That's the biggest thing that you can do is just limit your time and make that decision ahead of time. You can do that by limiting like an app like Rescue Time or something like that, which will tell you how much time you're spending on each. And then there are apps, I think it's called Focus Time, where you can actually turn certain apps off for certain hours of the day, so you can't even access them. So it's like
a good tool for parents.
What's that?
Great tool for parents, maybe.
Yeah, it's used a lot for that. And you can also limit like your Wi-Fi. You can actually set your Wi-Fi to go on and off at certain times so that you don't have access to the internet during these hours because it's family time or dinner or whatever is important to you more so than the internet.
Like what? What would be more important than the internet?
I don't know, man. I love the internet. But it's family, interaction, human connection. That's the only thing. Your own mental health.
Yes.
Much more important than the internet.
That's kind of actually sorry, I'll let you finish this thought first, but I do want to get to the wheel of life that Zig Ziglar came up with about balance within life.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to hear what you have to say about creating balance, what kinds of habits and practices that you've been able to implement to create balance within your life.
So I don't see it as balance because I don't have different parts of my lives that are competing against each other. I have one life that I live. And I want each of the things that I do in my life to be as amazing as possible, right? That's kind of how I see it. I want my business to be as amazing as possible. I want my social connections to be as amazing as possible. And in that, like I said, it's making your plan ahead of time. So you have an idea of how much time you're devoting to each of these things based on your own values, right? I can't tell you what's right for you. You can't tell me what's right for me. It has to be, it's a very, very subjective thing.
Yeah, we all try.
Like Elon Musk, like he loves sleeping in his office, working 18-hour days. That's not for everybody.
Yeah.
So he would have a very, very, I don't like the word balance. I like integration. So I like everything to work together in my life. So kind of separating them is kind of like classifying things or like polarizing things. I don't like it. I like things to be very, very centric and all around one common core of beliefs, which are mine, which are open to change, but they're mine.
I love that you said that too. You're open.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's a huge thing, is being able to try to understand somebody else's view before you give your own is one of the greatest things that you can do for any conversation. Because like when you are polarized and you're coming to the table and they're firing off, it's like you want to fire back because you have a completely different perspective. Completely different. Totally different. You can't see how these two things can connect. But if you go, okay, but why do you feel that way? What caused you to feel that way? Can you kind of explain it to me how you've come to that belief? And really listen and do your active listening, repeat back to them in your own words so that you know that you're getting it right. And they will feel like you are at least listening. And that's one of the most important things you can do for another human, is just to make them feel heard. So if you can do that, then you know how your argument fits with theirs, if it does or if it doesn't. And then you can then try to get them to understand your point of view if you still think you're right. But at least understand where they're coming from first and how they got to those beliefs. Because like I said earlier, there's good points on both sides usually. Mm-hmm. Like fears and things like that are completely valid on both sides. It's just where do they fall on your hierarchy of, of values and beliefs. That's actually my latest article that I'm working on. I'm calling it Moral Hierarchies, because there are only, I think, 6 things that we have kind of built-in morality things about. Like there's right versus wrong, or hurt, do no harm. There's a liberty, so a freedom aspect. There's in-group versus out-group. So how much do you prefer your in-group versus others? Like how do you feel safe? Safety was another one. And those things, basically each person has their own hierarchy of those 6 beliefs as to which ones are more important. They're all important. We all agree they're all important. But the other side, so take something like gun control. You're like, these people on this side believe that it's more important for liberty and have no oppression of it. They believe that is morally higher and morally more right than a few people getting hurt because of those weapons. So the do no harm on this side is much higher on their moral hierarchy, where on this side it's the liberty. So they're not that far apart. They're just differing in
priorities,
magnitude, basically. So it's like one is just overshadowing the other on this side, and the other one is overshadowing this one on the other side. So once you agree that those are both important on both sides, then you can hopefully come to some understanding in the middle.
That's the key. Most people are so extreme that they're like, nope, you're wrong, I'm right, period. There's no in between. They're both important. David R. Hawkins, have you ever heard of him?
Yeah. I think I brought up Power versus Force the other day.
Yeah, okay, cool. And yeah, actually maybe you actually turned me on to some of his work, and that's why I own a lot of books of his now. He says that when you're talking about love and hate, that's very polarizing.
Yeah.
But if you can look at it as only love and varying degrees of just love, and then stop vibrationally emitting the word hate in your vocabulary at all,
yeah,
then maybe those vibrations will create nothing but love from then on, and unification, and less diversification in such polarized ways that it tears people apart and makes them all hate each other all the time.
Well, the thing that I love about his work is it's not just love and hate, right? He's got a whole ladder of emotions that you can go through. And it really does make sense in terms of the book. There's that, it's like each step you can make up that ladder is just a small step. But if you make multiple steps, it's like anything, you make progress. But just saying love and hate, it's like it's really hard to go from hate to love in one jump. But you can take that next step. You can be like acceptance. There's so many little steps that you can make between those two sides that will bring them together. But trying to get one to go from completely on this side to completely on the other is almost impossible. And it's not very effective. So I figure the things that aren't very effective, we shouldn't do.
I agree with that. Somebody was talking about how anger is higher on the vibrational scale or level of consciousness, however you want to frame it. But they said it's higher than hopelessness. And so when we're in a hopeless state and then we start expressing anger,
Yeah,
that's
that's a
actually a
little low.
benefit.
Yeah. I
Small
do
steps.
believe that the smaller the steps, the more, you know, the more travelable that path is.
Yeah,
Like,
you're going to gain momentum.
and once you build that momentum, it's hard to stop. So it's once you start that upward spiral, it's really, really effective in almost all areas of your life. You can do the downward spiral. I did it into my depression. I just kept going down. I kept
Easy to
seeing
do.
more and more things that to be depressed about. But the same cognitive function that facilitates the spiral back the other way.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
we've got that. All of us have that within us.
it's 100%. So this is another Jason Silva thing. He sees emotions not on the one scale from bottom to the top. What he sees is negative emotion, positive emotion coming down like a U. And down here is just where you're numb, like you don't feel anything. So you're not really happy, you're not really sad, you're just, it's another day. And he says that it also works like a skateboard ramp. As high as you go up on this side is how high you can go up on the other side. So when you are ecstatic and amazed all the time, that means if that's taken away from you, you can be like as sad and remorseful as you could ever get, because how high you go up on one side of that U is how high you can go up on the other side.
That is such a hopeful message because people that are literally suicidal
Yeah,
and hopeless and depressed, anxiety ridden, and just feel like they're damaged and broken forever,
yeah,
that right there is the reason why to keep trying, to keep going, because he's so right. And you explain that so well. You can. I've done that in my life. I've gone from completely hopeless and suicidal for years to now the exact opposite. So I really vibe with that. That's a really hopeful message.
yeah. It's one of the most intuitive ways emotions ever been explained to me. Because like I would rather be crying and sad if that meant that I could be that happy, that level of happiness on the other side, rather than just feeling numb.
That's interesting. I've never heard that put that way before.
He said, what did he say? He put him from like 1 to 10. He's like, I pity people who live here between 4 and 6 because they never feel that happy, but they never feel that sad. It's safe. But if in order for you to feel that happy, you've got to risk being that sad.
Yeah. Here we are, humans in these bodies. Why not take it to the max, enjoy it to the fullest, have
I mean,
every extreme
if
of
there's
emotion?
anything in your life that you get to do is you get to experience things. Why not
According to
experience?
how we want to as individuals too.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about the possibility of upgrading every aspect of our lives. You articulate, you're a brilliant writer, by the way. You've written so much, and everything you share, I just can't help but consume it, because one of the things I love about you is you did teach me that it's okay to disagree, but you don't just disagree to disagree. You do it intelligently and methodically and in ways that empower me to think about things from a completely different perspective than I never would have. And that offers me an opportunity to then upgrade. And I don't seek out any longer everyone who would support me in my own thinking and feed my ego. I literally seek out people like you to be around and to learn from and to grow with, because you don't think the same things that I do. And that's why I really enjoy our back and forth. And I learned so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of power in that. It's like if you are talking, or if it's your point that you're disagreeing with, you've already known that. But if you listen to somebody else, you could learn something new. It's like I will always search for something new rather than something I already know.
Mm.
It's just because adding to that, like when you flex the mind, expand the mind, it never is able to go back to where it was. And I want to have as much information as possible for me to make the best decisions for me. I'm not saying anybody else has to make them. I will, when I write, I try to back up all of my decisions with some sort of support. Scientific studies, especially, because I'm very logic-based, like I said. I want to give those things to people so that they can make the best decision for them. I'm telling them why I made mine, try to give support for my decision and reasons why you could do the other, and let people make up their mind. I'm more of a fan of giving people the truth and allowing them to make the best decision for them. Even if you don't believe that they are capable of it, give them the opportunity. They might surprise you.
They usually do.
It's like the messaging around this whole pandemic thing has been awful because I have a biochem background in college, so I'm fairly well versed with what's going on. But the way that they came out and said, don't wear masks early because all the PPE were being taken from the nurses and hospitals for people out on the street, when the hospitals was the more like dangerous place and they needed it more there. Why not say that rather than say, don't wear masks? They don't work anyway. Because then you're going to try to, a month later, trying to get them to wear masks now that we've ramped up production and we have masks. Mm-hmm. Like, why can't you just say the truth? Like right now, how everybody's getting vaccinated and they're saying that you still have to wear masks and things like that, which I understand why, right? Because there's no way to really tell who's gotten the vaccine and who hasn't. So people would just take their masks off who didn't get vaccinated. It makes it more transmissible again. So I understand that. But why not say that? It's like, look, you technically don't have to wear masks. If you wanted to hang out with 10 other people that have been vaccinated in an enclosed environment, you know, closer than 6 feet, you can do that because you've been vaccinated. Now, out in public, we need your support still in order to have the rest of the country get vaccinated. So we'd appreciate it if you wore masks still, so that all the stores could do business properly, and that would allow society to still function the way it needs to in order to keep the spread down. Yeah. If they say something like that, then people go, okay, I can wear a mask. They're asking me to wear a mask. They know that I don't have to, but I'm going to do that for my fellow Americans, rather than pitting the sides against each other, going, I shouldn't have to wear a mask. You should. It's a mandate. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that hard.
Yeah, I think you're right. Interesting.
I'm just always a fan of letting people make their own decision. If they make the wrong one, you know what? We're human. I've made mistakes, a lot of them, and I will make more. I'm sure of it.
Me too. For sure.
So
wisdom comes from making unwise decisions and then learning from that, recalibrating and adopting new behaviors and trying those out. And it's all about experimentation.
I am
and learning.
Like 100%. I think
I know you do.
I think that our country should adopt more of that, because say you wanted
along with honesty.
Well, I'm talking about the testing. Like, say you wanted to figure out which way was better to handle the coronavirus. Florida didn't want to wear masks and didn't want to shut down. Great. You know what? We're going to restrict the movement of people in your state, just to your state, for the month. And we're going to see how the numbers go. California wanted to mask up. They wanted to do that. Great. We're going to shut off California so nobody goes in or out for a month. We were on lockdowns anyway. Might as well lock it down and be like, look, here is the actual numbers. This place that has this population density, they masked up. They only had this much transmission. This place didn't close down anything, so their economy is still booming, but they have these many cases. So which is more valuable?
That's usable
now you've got
data.
the actual numbers to figure that out.
Yeah. More intelligent way to go about it, for sure.
So that's how you stop arguments. It's like, look, I don't even care why you believe what you believe. You know what? Let's say you're right. What do you want to get out of that? What is your end result? Say you're making policy for something like the US. It's like, we want to see crime rates go down, and we want to see, median level incomes go up. So you set those things that you want to see happen, and those are all going to be the same no matter what side you're on. So you come to an agreement where it's like, I want to see crime go up or down by this amount, and this is how I think we should do it. The other side's going to go, okay, we want to see those numbers too, but this is how we think we should do it. You go, okay, let's find a state to test that one. Let's find a state to test this one, and let's see it in the numbers. Because you can argue all you want, but when you see it on paper and it's like, look, this really did get exactly what we were looking for, and this one didn't. This one worked better, this one slightly worse. So let's go with this one. Being able to take that test and see approach is better, in my opinion, because it's more it's more ground up. Ground up is how you build really, really strong, diverse systems.
With a strong foundation.
Exactly. It's like, it's evolution. Like, we wouldn't be here without bacteria, and then plants, and then animals, and then primates and mammals. And without that whole chain of evolution, we wouldn't be here. There would be nothing even close to our intelligence if we just tried to make us. If you'd have asked somebody with a human intelligence to create something like a human, they couldn't do it. But evolution did. And that's a much stronger process than top down. Because if there's one person or one group of people trying to do one thing and basically telling everybody how to act in order to do that, you don't know how it's going to go. You have nothing. You have somebody's guess, right? And I'd like to think I'm an intelligent person, but I can't predict human behavior. I would have never thought toilet paper would have been the thing to run out of before this whole thing. It's like, really, does toilet paper stop the transmission of this virus?
What about water? So maybe there is purpose in polarity. Maybe diversity is super important.
And that's 100% what I believe is everything that you can look at, ecosystems, worlds, financial plans, everything is stronger when it's diversified. Because if you are singular focused, something can happen in that chain and ruin the entire thing. That's why people have multiple streams of income. It's like, you think they want to be focused on 8 different businesses? No, they'd like to just do one that they're interested in, but that's not stable. Something happens in that somewhere, a law gets changed, people's beliefs change. That whole business can go under very quickly. And now you are not stable anymore. So having the multiple streams, the multiple areas, the multiple things to invest in, multiple species and things like that in an ecosystem, that actually strengthens whatever is being diversified. There's a thing called collective intelligence too, which is, I may be smart, but I know some things that you don't, you know some things that I don't. So if we work together, now we are smarter than either one of us. And that works together forever.
I like that. So
there are people in Africa who think differently than us, who have new ideas that we would never think of. And when you bring that to the table and everybody's working together, now you've got everybody's intelligence to work with. Yeah, you've got more people, more like dynamics in order to come to an answer, but that answer is going to be stronger than any other answer you can get. So I'm huge on diversity right now. I even said this yesterday. I had a conversation because United came out and said that they were going to hire 50% females and ethnicities because their pilots are a majority male and white. So somebody shared that and said, what are your opinions on this? It's like, well, he's like, but it's all ex-military people that apply for that. Like, they have piloting experience. They're the best ones for the job. And it's like, yeah, they may be the best ones for the job, but what creates the best team?
Diversity.
Like, having those differing opinions, because if they all think the same way, then they're going to be flying planes all the same way. And if you put somebody else in that cockpit and they saw the way it was flying and they go, here's an idea, we could do it this way, and maybe that's safer. So having those differing opinions and different thought processes actually creates the best team. Like, it's in the NBA, you can't put 5 all-stars on the same team and automatically they're good. You have to have supporting roles.
And lots of practice and repetition. Yeah. That's working together and collaborating. I mean, it's made so much easier through like Skype, the internet, worldwide. We can reach people in an instant now and download content and knowledge that we never had access to before in generations previous to us. And what a beautiful, diverse, polarized world we live in. I came into this conversation thinking that polarization, separation issue has no purpose and it's not valuable, but I think you're kind of changing my mind here.
Diversity is good. Polarization is not, because polarizing is, it creates the division between us. Diversification means, we have differing opinions, but we're still working together.
That's more unification.
So, that's the caveat. It's like, you want it, but you want it in certain ways. And
can't always have everything we want
life.
exactly
life
the way.
Is nuanced.
Yeah. Life is beautiful. And it's interesting that, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And when we go through massive amount of suffering for long enough to the point where we become hopeless, that's gold, because then we can go around to the other end of the U, down the ski ramp and up the other side. And it shoots us onto a totally different trajectory than maybe we were expecting.
So there was this really great quote that I saw, and I'm not sure I'm going to get it right, but it was something to the effect of, history is not made by exceptional people. History is made by trying times. So the big things in history, the big heroic things, aren't just some amazing person. It's somebody reacting to something awful.
Heroically.
Anything. Like, any of the Nazis would have stepped up and been like, this is wrong. That's not the biggest step in the world, but it would have been huge to have dissension within them. But none of them did, because they were living out their own very small bubble of thought process. There was no deferring thought in there anywhere. So in those times where things are bleak is when history is shaped and transformed. I mean, like Cuban Missile Crisis, if one sub-commander would have taken the actual order to launch, then we would have had nuclear war. But because of one person thinking differently, he goes, because they got the order from Russia to launch. And now each sub has to have 2 people turn the keys and agree that we're going to launch. And then it is the captain's call to make the launch. And the captain decided not to do it.
Thank God, or else we wouldn't be here right now having this conversation.
It's like that, having that strength in that moment to ignore orders in the right occasion is how we shape the world. And those are the most amazing things, and they only come around every once a generation, maybe. So it's in those situations that when you have these tools that we've been talking about to understand your own self and your own values and make up your own mind, that's when it's really important. Is because everybody's going to be talking doom and gloom, everything around you. This whole last year, everybody's like, this is never going to end, or this, that. It's like, that's not true. Somebody to step up in that situation and be like, look, the way we're handling this is wrong. This is how it should be. And I'm always one for the data to do that. I may be too much on that end.
Oh, that's valuable though. Diversity, man, you know?
Yeah. I would like to see, where was I at on that? Like, I would like to see that when everybody is thinking one way, or when sides are starting to separate, polarize, I would like to see more people acting like olive branches and like reaching out, like, hey, why do you feel this way? And the other side, hopefully the same way. But if you have more of those people who are, because if you look at anything, this is my middle argument, it's like if you look at the distribution of anything, any belief, any physical trait, anything across the entire population, you've got very few people on this side, very few people on this side, and then a ton of people in the middle, where it's like they don't really believe all the way out here, but they fall somewhere in the middle. That is where the majority of people sit. That's why we can have two parties, because they flip-flop back and forth. People in the middle will shift sides. Mm-hmm. So those people really need to try to understand both sides without just following the crowd. The delusions of crowd. There's so much wisdom in crowds, but there's so much mass delusion as well.
I agree with that.
It's a double-edged sword on that one, because you really want as many people working on it as possible, but you can put, a team of NASA engineers all in a room and they will do some stupid stuff because of the group.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how we all are taught from a very young age what to believe, but never how to think?
It's big. It's one of Neil deGrasse Tyson's thing. He's like, I would rather know somebody knew how to think rather than they knew the right answer.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that guy. He's very intelligent. Someone to follow for sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to continue this conversation. Yeah. We've got to wrap it up. I would like to ask you, I know that you've written quite a lot of books. You got a website. Where can people learn more about you and the things, some of your ideas, and read some of the books you've written?
My website is the best place. It's billyscottthoughts.com. So my name, Billy Scott, and then thoughts, because my name wasn't available. Unfortunately, he's like a singer or something.
No. Well, billyscottthoughts.com. Yep. I think that's a very memorable website.
I have an Instagram and a Facebook page under the same names. So if you search for it on either one of those platforms, you'll find it. I'm working on a course for dealing with depression. It's a thing that I came up with called the Tenshif Method. It is basically the shifts that I made and the tools that I used to get over depression myself. I'm not saying that anybody should try to do that and handle themselves. They should always reach out for help. But I know people aren't going to do that. Some people are just stubborn. So what I have is I have a course that's going to be coming out in a week or so. And it will be at depression.billyscottthoughts.com. It will be free. There will be no opt-in. I don't need to know that you're taking it. I'm not tracking anybody on those pages. It's just there to be there for value for people that need it.
Nice. I love that. And we need more of that in the world. That's that olive branch holding it out. Hey, I'm inviting you to come in and try some things that have worked for me. I love that.
It's like there's such a stigma about talking about mental health issues, right? That
There has been for decades, and it caused me such shame. I was
me too.
embarrassed. I did
It's like
not want to
that's
share.
why I couldn't tell everybody. It's like I was
Yeah.
so ashamed that I ended up in that position because why would I ever be there?
Mhm.
And because of that, it made my recovery much harder.
Yeah.
So I figured this is the best way that I can contribute to one, getting the word out there, two, helping people who may not be comfortable asking for help yet. And there will be blog articles on there about not only you and your own experience with depression, but what we can do as society to make it easier on people who have a mental health issue to speak about it, to reduce that stigma, to introduce these tools to younger and younger kids so that they are prepared when something does happen. Because ultimately, we will all have something bad happen. And I'd like it very much so if they didn't spend 4 years depressed like I did.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that. And I would too. That's a very supportive idea and set of tools that I know you're going to be sharing with everyone. And I'm going to go ahead and put those links in the notes for this podcast for sure, so that people can easily access it. I know having gone through 15-year very depressive suicidal cycle myself, and being able to pull out of that, that some of the tools that you've shared with me that you used, I didn't have access to some of those things, and for especially younger generation to be able to have that, like, just a click away, I'm so excited.
well, it's like life has become so easy, and that makes it very, very hard. Because it's so easy, kids are not challenged the way they used to be. It used to be you had to work on your farm before you went to school and you had all of these responsibilities. And now life is so easy that there aren't those little steps along the way that people build resilience and build those tools. So we need to introduce them earlier.
Confidence, credibility. Yeah, there's some habits and things that we can all do to start, and I
Yeah,
can't
just
wait to
like
see that.
emotional resilience and gratitude practices and those tools. Like I never heard anything like that in school.
Hmm.
And maybe that's generationally different because it was slightly harder, but still, like, I didn't have a major negative experience besides, having knives pulled and things like that. But that's all physical danger. That wasn't emotionally damaging to me. To go so far into life before something emotionally damaging happening,
Mm-hmm.
I had no tools with which to deal with it. I had no idea
Oh man.
where to even start.
And now kids at such a young age, because of social media and the
Yeah,
internet and all these different things that we never had to even think about,
bullying
they,
online. It's like,
oh,
man, we thought bullying was bad at school.
yeah.
It's like we don't understand it because it's like just turn it off. But they don't see it that way. That is a part of them because they've always come up with it. So it's part of their identity. So being
Mm.
bullied online is just as bad as being bullied in class. And it's sometimes worse because there's no consequence. Like if you called somebody a bad name when we were growing up, you'd got punched in the face. You can't do that over the internet, unfortunately. So there's there's less repercussions for the bullying, so more of it's going on, and it's just, if I had it my way, I would limit social media, hopefully till they were 18 at minimum, because I mean the human brain is still forming until 25. That's why we don't allow cigarettes and alcohol until 18 and 21, because those can change the way the brain is structured. Bullying, social media, those things are exactly the same. They release the same brain chemicals. They are just as addictive, if not more. And they're only going to get more addictive because they're trying to maintain your attention.
Uh, I can't wait to see all of the tools that you share with that class, and I'm definitely going to be checking that out. Um, Thank you to all the listeners for listening to this podcast. I hope you found some useful takeaways like I did. like new perspectives, beliefs, habits that you can implement and experiment with in your own personal life that will result in an upgrade of the way that you see yourself and also an upgrade in your personal reality. If you're listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel and click on the little bell to be notified every time a new podcast is released. And also, please share the link to this podcast with those people in your lives that you think may benefit from this content. Much love to all of you in your personal life journey. Please check out my website at goodinthehead.com. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Good in the Head is all one word. And then please remember that an upgrade in our beliefs of self will automatically lead to an upgrade in habits, resulting in a more enjoyable life experience. Let's all get to work. Thank you so much for being a guest on this show, and I look forward to making it happen again with you.
Yeah, definitely.
I really appreciate the connection and the friendship that we have.
I want to say too that I really respect what you do every day, the things that you share, and your audience has to be better people for knowing you. It's just, there's no other way.
That's very generous. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I value our friendship that we've been cultivating over the past few years, and I look forward for decades of that to continue on as you continue to help me expand my mind in ways I never even thought of. So
looking forward to it.
Thank you. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.